All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yud Zayin Yud Ches. As Yigal did point out, today's work is difficult. We start the Tuma Sugya, which basically will go probably around for I think till the end of the end of the parak, right in the Sechta, excuse me, on Yud Ches, probably on 10 blats. So let's enjoy what we have before we get to that. And then I think we roll straight into Yevamos. So all right, Beis Shammai Yomrim, we're in the Mishnah Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Mesechus Chagiga, Beis Shammai Yomrim, Mevin Shlamim ve'ein Seimchim Alehem. V'lo Olos. Says Beis Shammai. Now we saw this, a reference to this a little earlier. Beis Shammai holds that on Yontif, right, we don't bring karbanos that are not eaten, only something that's eaten. So, and anything that we do for the korban is only something that can be done on Yontif. So they hold that you don't do smicha since it's not mandatory to do immediately before. So therefore they say, hold off on smicha, right? Because we don't want to use an animal on the yontif, right? Because the gzeira of using an animal. And also don't bring olos because olos get completely burnt upon the mizbech. Beis Hillel says, no, you bring the shlamim, you bring olos, you do everything, even it's yontif, you bring it normal. The same chaleim. Atzeres shechal yes be'erev Shabbos. And furthermore, we'll soon see why there's two machlosim. You do smicha upon them. Period. Thank you. I was like, one right. Atzeres shechal yes be'erev Shabbos. If it's Atzeres, it comes out. Now Atzeres is referring to Shavuos, comes out on Friday. Beis Shammai Yomrim Yom Tavuach Achar Shabbos. You want it now? We're discussing. You bring your olos riyah, you bring your chagiga. When is that? As we discussed earlier, we're actually going to discuss further today. You have 7 days of Tashlumin. Go ahead, Yom Tavuach, the day of slaughtering, is going to be pushed out because you can't do it in Yom Tov, according to them, right? So do it. Bring your Riyah, your Olos Riyah, and bring it on Sunday. Push it off 2 days. And Beis Hillel, Yom Tavuach Achar Shabbos. No, we don't do that. Push it off till after Shabbos. Rather, you do it on Friday. But however, if it does occur on Shabbos, if it does come out on Shabbos, then they both agree that you bring it on Sunday. Right? And when there is this Yom Tavuach, the Kohen Gadol does not wear the clothing of Mislavesh B'Kelev. He does not go ahead and wear those, the clothing he wears on the Yontif, because basically he shows that it's Lamaisa, it's a Sunday, it's a weekday. In order to go ahead and fight against those, the Tzedukim, right, who held that they darshan from the Psukim, or their lack of drasha, right, is that says Machaz Shabbos is referring to that Shavuos always comes out on the 7th on a Sunday, Machaz Shabbos after a Shabbos, as opposed to as opposed to the Chazal where they darshan that it's exactly 7 weeks. So therefore they prove that on that Sunday, the Kohen Gadol doesn't wear special clothes. There can be a fast day, right? It's Motor Behesped. So all those occur. Fine. Zok the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Oshia. So now we're going to discuss this for the next, Amar or so, next blot. Amar Rabbi Oshia. Menayin letzer sheyesh la tashlumin. Where do we know that Shavuos has tashlumin? Kol Shiva for 7 days. Shenamar the pasuk has a Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos. The pasuk says Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. So all three of them are mentioned together. Makish Chag HaShavuos leChag HaMatzos. So therefore, we compare Chag HaShavuos to Chag HaMatzos, right? Remember, Shavuos is 1 day, right? Not 2 days, right? 1 day, right? Chag HaMatzos is the 7 days, right? Day 1 and day 7 are Yontif. Days the middle of Chamoid. Ma Chag HaMatzos yesh la tashlumin. Just like Chag HaMatzos is tashlumin you can do throughout. Kol Shiva av Chag HaShavuos yesh la tashlumin Kol Shiva. So too, Shavuos has tashlumin for 7 days. Ve'im makish Chag HaSukkos. Oh, why don't you Chag HaSukkos? Ma Chag HaSukkos yesh la tashlumin Kol Shmona. So if that's the case, why didn't she have Tashlumin for 8 days? Learn, all right? Pesach is 7 days. Shavuos is actually 8 days because you have Shmini Atzeres is 8, so maybe 8 days. So the Gemara answers no. Shmini regal for the Asmo. No, Shmini is not really. It's its own holiday, and you bring it that. So Shmini regal for the Asmo. Hey, that which we say that Shmini Atzeres is its own holiday. Hani Milinan Pazar Kashap. That's when it comes to these 6 different inyanim. Right, we'll just go through them quickly. Right, the pay is pious. Right, in terms of the lottery, in terms of the kohanim who go to the avoda, it's its own separate pious. Each day is not normally on Sukkot. It's a continuation of from before. This, however, is a completely new lottery. Right, it says there korban. No, pious. Right, zman. Yeah, I was the wrong. Right, so zman is in terms of that they say shechianu. Right. Then there's the reish, which is regel. Is the regel f'ne'atzmahu. That's it has its own. One second. Regel sheish l'shem regel has its own name. Right. It's not called sukkos. Right. Kuf is the korban. Right. That this korban. The korbanos are different in terms of the other ones. They're counting down. And from 14 goes down. 13, 12, 11, 10, and all of a sudden Shmini Atzeres is 1. Shin is referring to the. I'm just looking in Rashi. Shmini. The shir shayom of that day is different, right? Shir, right? This is not the seder of the shir of the other days, right? It doesn't speak of the same concept as the other shirim. And the base is bracha, right? It has its own the bracha of the Mevarches HaMelech, right? The Mevarches HaMelech on the Shmini Atzeres. So those issues are separate. Yes, that's separate. But the tashlumin there, it's not separate. That's part of it. The Tanai we learn in Mishnah. Mishlo chag v'yom tav rishon shachag chagigas kol haregel v'yom tav achron the yom tav achron. So in Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, so we say over there that the Mishnah says that if you miss the tashlumin from the first day, you could make it up even on day 8. Day 8 is included. Don't tell me it's regel chayasa. There is no tashlumin. Then the tashlumin is included. So there is 8 days. So once again, back to the question: why are you trying to learn that 7 days, right? It should be 8 days, right? Why do we not say tachman for 7 days after Shavuos? A kid, you should not say for 8 days, right? So my answer is no. Tafas merula, tafas merula, tafasa, right? This is a halacha when it comes to in terms of learning out, right? The Gemara oftentimes when you have 2 options to learn out, so the Gemara says tafas meruba. If you try to take too much, right, then you don't take anything, right? You take a little, then you're successful, right? What do they say? Pigs get slaughtered, right? So you try to take too much, it doesn't work. So over here, you learn to you try to be a chazer, right? So you want too much, sometimes you end up with nothing, right? So over here, right? So you have an option of learning to 7 or learning to 8. So then we apply the rule of tafas maruba, tafasta, that you darshan the smaller number, which would be 7. So that's the case. Why say the Chag Sukkos? Like Kushi the Chag Matzos. The Chag Matzos, Ma Chag Matzos to Lina. Just like Chag Matzos requires Lina, they have to go ahead and stay overnight. Of Chag Sukkos, so to Chag Sukkos, when you go ahead and you offer your kabbanis, you should stay. You have to stay overnight in Yerushalayim to Lina. I have a husband over there. What is the proof? Turn the page, right? The pasuk says, it says over there, and you turn on in the morning and you go back to your tent, you back to your home. So you see what I mean? Turn in the morning. It must be that you had to stay there overnight. Fine. Top line. Tanan. So we learned Atzeres Shachal Yais Erev Shabbos. Shavuos falls out on a Friday. Beishamai Oimrim Yom Tavuach Achar Shabbos. Beishamai says the day of slaughter, because we don't want to bring the even though you really technically could bring the chagiga, right? You don't bring the riyah because it's an olah or the olas riyah on Friday. You can't bring on Saturday because it's Shabbos. So you bring on Sunday. It doesn't have Yom Tavuach. My lab ein la Yom Tavuach klal. Is Beishamai not saying that there's no day of slaughter at all, and there's no tashlumin at all? So it says, "Lo, she'enat tzricha Yom Tavuach." You don't need a Yom Tavuach yet. If you want to go ahead and there's tashlumin, you got 7 days, as we just darshan earlier, right? The Chari would agree. The Beis would agree to that, right? He's just saying that you're not required. It's not usher to go ahead and do it on Friday. So what are you trying to use the Merkavinim b'yomei? But that you're allowed to go ahead and offer the olas riyah on Friday and your chagiga on Friday, right? Right, that you already have in the first part of the mission. The Tanan, Beishamai says you go ahead and bring a shlavim, but don't do smicha upon them, and don't bring olos at all. right? The Beis Hillel says you go ahead and you bring shlam and olos and you do smicha on them, right? Let's say when it falls on a Tuesday. So we already know that Beis Shammai says you can do it. So Gemara says no.
Is the chagiga a shlamim or
Chagiga is a shlamim, right? There's two requirements. There's an olos riyah,
right?
and there's a chagiga that's required, right? You don't really get into the shlamim simcha because you don't need meat on multiple days because you have the meat from the chagiga, right? So those are requirements. You can't bring the olos riyah, right? According to Beis Shammai, right? Beis Shammai holds you can't bring the olos riyah at all because you don't bring olah in Yontif because there's no usage for man, right? You're not using it on Yontif, right? So therefore, you have to push it off. So we're pushing that off, right? So Beis Shammai will also say, right, you throw the chagiga, the shlamim with it. But technically, according to Beis Shammai, you could bring the chagiga, right, without doing smicha on Yantav. You still got to bring your olas riyah on Sunday or the next day. But you at least that point you have to do.
So all we're dealing with really is Yantav Shachaliyos Shabbos.
Erev Shabbos.
Erev Shabbos.
Well, according to Beis Shammai, you always have it the next day. The Gemara right now is asking, why do you have two separate machlokes, right? So we're soon going to see why. But Beis Shammai always holds you never bring on Yantav. So you bring it the next day. The next day is Shabbos, you got to bring it 2 days later. All right. So that was Beis Shammai says, and Beis Hillel says, you always bring it, even if it's Friday, even if it's the middle of the week. So now we're going to see why they have two.
Bring it on the first day.
Bring it on the first day, right? Don't tell me you want to bring it if you're right. So he says the question is, why do you have it twice, right? Why do you have it regular, and why also have the separate machlokes on Friday? So if you have it on the first case, right? Because if let's say it falls on a Tuesday, you can bring it Wednesday, one day after. But over here, when it's a Friday, the next day is Saturday, you got to push off 2 days. Even if we just had it that occurred on the Friday, right? Because on this day, Beis Hillel says, you know what? We're not going to push off 2 days because you can't bring it tomorrow on Saturday. You have to bring it Sunday. So just bring it on Friday. But let's say it falls on the middle of the week. Maybe they'll agree to Beis Shammai, right? They can just go ahead and just bring it the next day. As long as it's within 24 hours, it's no big deal. Right? Once you push off 2 days, that's a big problem. So maybe that it would be moda to the Beis Shammai. Therefore, it's shricha. Therefore, we state the machlokes, basically identical machlokes in both on any time, let's say on a Monday or Tuesday, and also on a Friday. Fine. Tashma. Come and listen. Mi shlochag shivas yimei Pesach u'shmas yimei Chag v'yontif harishon shel Atzeres shuv ein chagim. Person who did not go ahead and he shalochag, right? He shalochag means he didn't bring the chagiga, right? During the days of Pesach and the 8 days of the Chag, right? And of Sukkot, right? And that of Seres, even that Shavuos, right? Ein chagig, right? So he says over there. So he says Shuvin Chogeg. So he no longer in Chogeg. My lav Yom Tov Shal Atzeres is not referring to the Yom Tov of Atzeres. In other words, that if you didn't go ahead and bring on Shavuos, then you're done, right? There's no tashlumin, right? This is different, right? So right, I was going to say. So perhaps it's going on the original statement of Rabbi Ushio, who introduced us, to tashlumin. So it says my lav Yom Tov Shal Atzeres lo Yom Tavuach. It means Yom Tavuach, right? So on Sunday knows if you don't bring it on Sunday, then you're done. If that's the case, right? So the Tashlumin isn't 7 days. You only have 1 day to make it up. That's Sunday or the next day. Same you made Tavuach. The days of Tavuach, the days of slaughter, and not just one. Don't be Medayik Yom Tavuach. It's Yimei Tavuach. So therefore, nothing to see here, right? You can't bring a proof from this Bryce or not. So Toshma, come and listen. The Tani Rav Shmuel Amar Torah Mana Yamim v'Kidesh Chodesh. Go ahead and count days, right? And then you count days, and then you're Mekadesh the Chodesh. Then you have the new month, right? Rosh Chodesh. Mana Yamim v'Kidesh Atzeres. Count 49 days. Then go ahead and sanctify and make your Shavuos. Ma Chodesh Minyan of Abba Seres Minyan. Just like by Chodesh, by Chodesh, right? It's that which we count, we celebrate Abba Seres Minyan. So my love. So what does that mean? So my love Gamer Mechodesh. Ma Chodesh Yom Echad Atzeres Yom Echad. Just like by Rosh Chodesh, you only have 1 day to bring the korban, right? The korban for that day. So to Shavuos is only 1 day. So Merava, the Tisbara, this doesn't make sense. Otu Atzeres, Yoime Manina and Shavuot Lo Manina, right? And Shavuos, we're only counting days, we're not counting weeks, right? I Vomar Abai, Mitzvah Yomen Yomei, the Pasuk said there is a mitzvah to go ahead and count days. The Chsiv, Tisbaru, Chamishim Yom, count 50 days. Or Mitzvah Yomen Shavuot is also a mitzvah to count weeks. The Chsiv, Shiva, Shivos Tisbar Lecha, right? Go ahead and count 7 weeks. The item furthermore, Chag Shavuos, Ksiv. What's it called? It's called Chag Shavuos, right? So you count the weeks, Shavuot. So don't give me this that's like Rosh Chodesh and one day. They're just like Rosh Chodesh one day, so Shavuos is one day, and therefore there is no Tashlumin. You don't have 7 days to make up for it if you can't get there on time. You have the entire week. It's not a good comparison. And the way Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Tana start Amar Kra. So it says Krosam Ukatzirchem. Kutzirchem. Right? Is that the pasuk, right? Right. Right? Is that the next pasuk? Right? Yeah. Okay, fine. See, remember something. Fine. Anyways, read enough during the year, right? How many times do we read that? Several, right? Anyway, so the pasuk says the 2 psukim sort of back to back. Pasuk in Vayikra Chav Gimel, in pasuk Chav Aleph, and then Chav Beis. So it says there Ezuch. So now it makes a comparison, right, to the similar, way it's written. So Ezuch Chag Shata Karev Kaitzer, which is a holiday you go ahead and you call out or you make, right? It says the Cross Mikar Kodesh, right? You call it Mikar Kodesh, and then you also do Katsira. There's a Katsira that you go ahead and your Kaitzer for the purpose of the offering. That's referring to the Atzeres, right? Where they go ahead and they bring the carbon. So this is the Ktsira. So he said that's referring to Shavuos. So Gemara says, so Amos. So when is that? So Ilema b'Yantif. If it's talking about Yantif, Ktsira b'Yantif Mishari, right? Are you allowed to do Ktsira on Yantif? Right? It says Krasam Ktsira of Kutzerchem, right? So Mishari El Lado Tashlumin. Rather it means, right? Is referring to when you're celebrating and you're doing the reaping and you're doing the cutting. So what is that for Tashlumin? Right? So he said, even though we have that earlier, we have that other proof, right? That we had the proof of earlier, which we learned. Rabbi Yoshia's proof was B'chag HaMatzos, B'chag HaShuas, B'chag HaSukkos, to compare the two that you have to Tashlumin for 7 days. And over here, we see it says you have you can call it a holiday, right? You make it a holiday, even as we call it a holiday while you're allowed to do the Ktsira, which is after, which is for Tashlumin. So you see, this is another source for Tashlumin, right? So you're even celebrating, you're holidaying, if there's such a word, you're holidaying even after the Yontif.
The Kutzerchem then is going on the days after Shavuot.
Right, because it can't be right, because it can't be talking during. Right, exactly, right. So therefore, the Afagav, so it says Yitzchak, we need both sources. The Amar of Ezra ben Yaakov. So he says, right? Made Rabbi Yoshia Havamina. I would have thought Matishlumin Shachag Matzos Aser B'Siyas Malacha after Shabbat Seres Nami Aser B'Siyas Malacha. If we would have learned from there, maybe we would have thought like this. Where are we learning for? We're learning from Pesach. Pesach, those 7 days, right? Are Aser B'Siyas Malacha, right? It's Chol Hamoed. You can't do certain malachas. So maybe during the Tashlumin, also certain malachas should be Aser, right? Kamash Malon, the Rabbi Yaakov comes to the Rabbi Yaakov that you can do the Ktsira, you can do other stuff, which is Malacha. Malacha is mutter during the days of Tashlumin. There are no prohibitions besides the fact that we allow you to bring the Tashlumin. And if we just had this proof of Rabbi Yaakov, we wouldn't know how many days of Tashlumin, right? Right. So the Kamash Malon, therefore, comes to teach us the Rabbi Yoshia that there is 7 days because we learned from Yemei Pesach.
When would you bring? If you can't do the Ktsira
right
before Shavuos, how do you bring the Shtei Chalos?
Right. No.
Special korban of Shavuos.
So it's not. So it says. So it says.
The Shtei Halecha, right?
You're not going to harvest before Shavuos.
Right.
So once the Omer is brought by Pesach, you can harvest for yourself. You can't bring. It's still
no, because that's we harvest.
No.
It doesn't matter. You don't need all the harvest. The Shnei Aleph only permits the new grain to be brought as a
right, brought as a mincha. Right.
You can't bring it as a mincha.
This Bakut Shechem is about.
It's about matanos. Matanos le'aniyim. Right. It's about giving to the poor, right? The pasuk says, it's not referring to the shtei. It's not necessarily referring to the shtei lechem, right? It's right. It's not right. Right then it says don't cut off the corners, which is another gifts to the poor. It's like right? Don't say the leket. You should leave lani. So it's talking about over there about leaving out right the stuff for the poor, right? The pasuk, you see the pasuk is brought on the side, right? So the pasuk is not necessarily talking about the cutting of the of the barley, whatever we brought for the shtei lechem. Fine. So back to the top of Yud Ches Manav, which is today's blat. So Reish Lakish Amar v'chag hakatzir. The pasuk says v'chag hakatzir. This is the pasuk v'chag hakatzir, right? Bikurei Mazar Kasher, right? These are v'chag hakatzir, right? So it says over there the holiday hakatzir of the Harzi. Ezachag shatar chageg v'kaitzer. What is something that you celebrate? And also you cut bo havyomer. Is that Atzeres? That's during the Atzeres, right? That's during the time, right? The crops have grown throughout the winter, right? And now then you harvest and you cut them. You don't gather them yet, but you cut them. So we talk about that's there. Amos Elam B'Yontif. If we're talking about on Yontif, when you do the actual Katsira, Tzar B'Yontif B'Yishar, is that permitted? Elav Tashlumin. Rather, it's referring to that you should be chagig, and the kaitzer is referring to Tashlumin, right? It's a very similar proof to the one we just had. So Amar Rabbi Yechon Elam Yata Chag Asif. Well, maybe it's not such a good proof. Why? Because it says Chag Asif. Right? It's referring to Sukkot. What is the holiday where we gather? Haviyam is Chag Sukkot. That's the beginning of the fall when you gather the crops in the field. Amos, when is that? Ilema b'Yontif. If there's a Yontif, right? Malachas b'Yontif mishari. Can you go ahead and do malacha and Yontif? Ela b'Chol Shamoed. Rather, it's referring to Chol Hamoed. So Chol Shamoed mishari, right? Is Chol Hamoed is all types of malacha mutter, right? Ela. Chag rather means Chag above Zman HaSifa. It's just referring to the holiday that comes during the Zman of the Sifa. Hachanami, so to over here, Chag above Zman HaKatzira. So to over here, it's referring to the holiday that comes during the Zman Katzira, and not necessarily telling you that you're celebrating while you're doing the Katzira. Because over there, by Shavuos, by Sukkot, it's not true, because you're not celebrating while you're doing the Malacha. Right, while you're doing the asifa, right? So over here, so too, you're not celebrating while you're doing the katsira, therefore it's not a good proof. Mechlal, nevertheless, look at these proofs. The tarvayu svir lahu, the chol shamoid asr b'asiyas malacha. The chol hamoed is asr b'malacha, right? You keep saying, right? You can't do it during that. So Menani Mili, from where do you know that from? So the Tana Rabbanan says as chag hamatzah is tishmar shivas yamim. For the holiday of matzahs, you should go ahead and guard for 7 days. So we learn from over here that Chol Hamoed is Asr B'Siyas Malacha. Divrei Rabbi Yosha. There's the opinion of Rabbi Yosha. And Rabbi Yonasan Omer, Einon Tzarich Yanin like Kavachimer. Umar Rishon V'Shvi Shein Kedusha Lifnei Lacharei and Asr B'Siyas Malacha. On the first day of Pesach and the last day of Pesach, that those are not surrounded, right? Of days of Kedusha. In other words, the first day of Pesach before it is not Kedusha, right? Erev Pesach Kedusha. And the last day of Pesach doesn't have Kedusha afterwards. Nevertheless, those days are Asr B'Siyas Malacha. So Chol Shamoed, Sheyesh Kedusha Lifnei V'Achareim, Eino Din, She Asr B'Siyas Malacha. Right? But, one second. But Chol Hamoed, right, which is surrounded by Kedusha, right? Certainly that should be forbidden to do Malacha. Yeah. What were we asking?
The day after Pesach, after the 7 days
right.
of Pesach, is Asr b'Malacha.
No. It's saying It's saying the days, the yontifs are Asr to do Malacha, day 1 and day 7.
Okay.
Even though each one of those days, day 1 is not surrounded by Kedusha, and day 7 is not surrounded by Kedusha, right? Because the day before Pesach is not Kadosh, and the day after Pesach is not Kadosh, right?
Yeah.
So those are not surrounded by Kedusha, yet they're Asr B'Siyas Malacha. So Chol Hamoed, those are Asr B'Siyas Malacha. You can't do Malacha on Yantif, right?
Right.
So Chol Hamoed, which is surrounded before and after by day 1 and day 7, certainly should be Asr B'Siyas Malacha.
Okay.
That was the logic. So the answer is, what are you talking about? Sheishis Yimei Breishis Yochichu. I'll give you 6 days that are surrounded by Kedusha, where it's Mutter Malacha. Look at the 6 days of the week, right? It's surrounded by Shabbos, Shabbos afterwards, right? Sheishis Yimei Breishis Yochichu. Sheish Kedusha Lifnei V'Acharein. There's Kedusha before them, Kedusha after them. Mutter B'Siyas Malacha, Mutter B'Siyas Malacha, right? Yeah, that's right. So God says no. Right? So it says no, the Shesimei Abrasius, right? There is no Korban Musaf on those days, right? And we don't bring Korban Musaf on, Sunday through Friday. But the Chol Hamoed has Korban Musaf. So maybe something which is surrounded by Kedusha and there's a Korban Musaf, that's when Asr B'Sis Malacha. But just being surrounded by Kedusha on its own, right? Like weekdays, right? Since there's no Korban Musaf, therefore those will be Mutar B'Sis Malacha, right? So the Gemara says, no, Rosh Chodesh Yechichu. Let's look at Rosh Chodesh. Sheyesh B'Korban Musaf, U'Mutar B'Sis Malacha. The Rosh Chodesh has Korban Musaf, it has B'Sis Malacha. So Mal Rosh Chodesh ain't Kari Mikra Kodesh. Well, no, you can't say, well, days of Rosh Chodesh, since it has a Musaf and it's Mutar Malacha, so Chol Hamoed should also be Mutar Malacha, because Rosh Chodesh is not called Mikra Kodesh. But Chol Hamoed is called Mikra Kodesh. And Hoel, the Kari Mikra Kodesh, Dinu Shasu B'Siyas Malacha. And since it's called Mikra Kodesh, therefore it should be Asr B'Siyas Malacha. So Tani Yidach, we have another brayso that supports that Kol Malachas Avodah Lo Yisasu. The pasuk says any malacha avodah lo yisasu. So limei chol shemoed she'asu b'siyas malacha. Divrei Rabbi Yosigli. So we learn from over there that according to Rabbi says Rabbi Yosigli. We learn from over there that chol hamoed is as b'siyas malacha. And Rabbi Kiva Omer, Eidot Tzarech, I don't need that. Harehu Omer, it says Eila Modei Hashem. It says Ida Modei Hashem. So b'ma kas medaber. What's it talking about? What is this moed? Right, medaber. Im berishon. If it's talking about day one, Harik Farnemar Shabbason. It already calls it Shabbason, right? Day one, I think it's over there on Pesach. It calls it Shabbason. If it's on the 7th day, Harik Farnemar Shabbason. It already called it. It's a Shabbason. Ha in a custom medaber. So what's referring to it as Eila Moadeh? Ha in a custom medaber. El b'chol Shemai. Eila Moadeh is only going to Chol Moed. Lamdecha. To teach you that's Asr Malacha. And Tani Idach. Well, it's the machlokes of the source, right? But yeah, the source. But they both hold Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Kiva, right? Same as Kara, Sis Malacha. Right. Yeah. So Tani Idach, I think some of these Gemaras actually are brought from there, right? They're just like since we got a topic.
Yeah, I think these are the source for
the So Tani Yidach, we learn another in the Brayso that says Sheishes Yamim Teichel Matzahs Uv'Yom Hashvi Atzeres LaHashem. It says 6 days go ahead and eat matzah, and the 7th day Atzeres. It says stop it LaHashem. So Mashvi Atzur, right? So Mashvi Atzur Sheishes Yamim Atzur. Just like the 7th day is you stop right from Malacha. So the 6th day you just have from Malacha. So Mashvi Atzur B'Chol Malacha Av Sheishes Yamim Atzur B'Chol Malacha. If that's the case, so if the 7th day we stop from all types of malacha. So to Chol Shemoy should all types of malacha v'yasra, even something which is tzarech, or even hefsed meruba, or other cases where they're permitted on Chol Hamoed, maybe those should be permitted on all should be exactly like Yatav. Tamalayim, therefore it says uv'yoyim hashvi atzeres, right? And the 7th day you stop from like the other days. Hashvi atzer b'chol malacha ve'en shishi yami atzer b'chol malacha. The 7 days that stop from all types of malacha versus the 6th day, which are stopping just from some types of malacha, which the Rabbanan have, and which malacha is that? And halal masr hakas ve'lucham and lamar lecha eiza yom aser ve'eiza yom mutar. Eiza malacha asura ve'eiza malacha mutaris. Right, and therefore, so the Torah is basically giving the chachamim the power to go ahead, and since it's very vague, it says right on Yontif you should stop from the types of malacha you do on Chol Hamoed. So therefore, it gives the chachamim the power as to which malachas are mutar to go ahead and do on Chol Hamoed, and which ones are Asr. But when it comes to Yantif, then all malachas are forbidden except for Eichel Nefesh Doba. Fine. Quote from the Mishnah, we said on this Yom Tavuach, this day of slaughter.
So Ketira is permitted on the intermediate days.
Right. Yes. If it's right for Tzarech, there's cases where it's not. Right, for holiday purposes, for sure. Yeah. So, or if it's a great loss or something like that, but if it's just for a person's, his work, then it could be an issue, right? When we talk about Hasbet and we say it's mutter, and this Yom Tavuach, we say, okay, you pushed off the slaughtering or the riyah, you can go ahead and do your Tashlum and Yom Tavuach the next day. However, it's mutter to do a Hasbet and Tanis, Shalom Kaimas to be a Omer B'Tzeres Achar Shabbos. In order basically to go ahead and disprove the Tzedukim. So, here's the hay. Vatanya Maisa Mace Alchsa Balud. So there was a Maisa, the Alexa, right? Alexa, who died, right? Maisa Mace Alexa Balud. B'nichnasu kol Yisrael l'seifto, right? And all Bnei Yisrael came to go ahead and be maspid. Lo nichna retired from Mipnei sheyom tov sha'atzeres haya. And Rabbi Tarfon stopped them because it was the Yontif of Shavuos. Yontif Sakadas, well, they were traveling, they all came in on Yontif and Shavuos itself. Say Yontif, Mikosadi, how could they go on Yontif? Ella Ema Mipnei Yom Tavuach. It was the Yom Tavuach. So what do you see over there? That Rabbi Tarfon, right? He didn't allow them to be maspid on the Yom Tavuach. Right, and we just said you are maspid, right? You are maspid on Yom Tavuach. It's the day after where the people would bring their karbanos where they couldn't bring before Teshlumin. They called it the Yom Tavuach, right? Beis Shammai says you had to. That's when you did it. Beis Hillel says you could. You could also do it on Yom Tov, right? So it's like kasha. So he says no, it's not a contradiction. Kan be Yom Tov shechal yisachar Shabbos, right? If over here we're talking about the case of whereas achar Shabbos. So then they want to go ahead and assume Kamayanda Shechal Yais b'Shabbos. Now, if it was Achar Shabbos, in other words, any time when it fell in the middle of the week, right? So therefore, any time in the middle of the week, so therefore they didn't have to, if it was a Wednesday. So if it was a Wednesday, Yom Tavuach, you didn't have to disprove the Tzedukim. It wasn't a Sunday, right? So therefore, there was Istur Chag, and the people were offering Kabbanas, and he says, not to do this hesped today for Alexa, right? However, if it was bedafka on Sunday, then this hesped, this tinus, this whatever you want. We want to show it. This day is chol as much as possible. Fine. Turn the page, right? Masnisa now is we start the fun sugya of the tuma and tahara, the ikar of chagiga. So it's not that it's very difficult. I mean, it is very difficult, but it's just something that we're not familiar with. And since we're not familiar with, so and there's not a lot of biblical sources, it becomes different. So the main there's a couple of things that happen by Tuma Tahara, right? One of the issues are that if the higher the kedusha something is, the more levels of Tuma there are. As we'll almost get the breakdown from the Mishnah. But if something has a higher level kedusha, then in addition, right, we know there's avatuma, right? So it can be avatuma, and then it could touch something, it becomes a rishon, and that can transmit to a sheni, to a shlishi, and even to a revi. Okay, but only if it's something which is very kadosh can it reach the revi status. Something which is not so kadosh in the beginning, right? Let's say chulin, right? Chulin is just regular mundane stuff, doesn't get to shlishi, right? Right. Truma doesn't get to revi, right? So these items, it depends how kaddish is. So let's see the Mishnah. Noitlin liyadayin lechulin ulameiser ulatruma. So one can go ahead and he can be noitlin liyadayin. He can wash his hands like zera drabanan, right? Even though really the hands are part of the body, but the hands move around a lot. So he washes his hands for chulin, right? For handling chulin. Ula meiser, and when we talk about meiser here, we're talking about meiser sheni, right? That's eaten in Yerushalayim. So that's a certain amount of kedusha, right? The second first, you take the second 10, right? The first meiser, right, is given to the Levim or whatever, right? So they take it. The second one is meiser sheni, bring it to Yerushalayim on years 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the Shemitah cycle. Ula meiser. And also truma. Truma is that which is the 150th approximately, right? Which is given to the Kohanim. Those are all those one washes hands. Ula kodesh, when it comes to hekdesh, right? Such as items of meat from a shlamim or something like that. Ula kodesh, right? You got a big steak, but it comes from your shlamim, right? So ula kodesh matvilut, right? You go ahead and you put your hands, right? That you say in a mikvah. 40 saw, right? We don't do that now, right? But there was mikvah, right? Everyone has their own mikvah down the block. You put your hands in. That's what I did. Matvilit. Ulachatas. When we're talking about the chatas here, we're talking about the water that was used, right, for sprinkling that had the ashes of the paraduma to be matara people. Ulachatas. Nitma yadav. Nitma gufo. If his hands became tameh, then his whole body is, and therefore he has to go ahead. And his entire body he has to be go to the mikvah. Now, tava lechulin, a person went, he was tameh, so he went to be tovel for chulin, only chulin hugzak lechulin. Now, chulin doesn't necessarily have to be eaten b'tahara, right? It can be eaten, but there are certain people we'll soon see, right? That held to a higher standard, the prushim. Right, they held themselves to a higher standard to eat chulin b'kedusha b'tahara, right? So therefore, if they went to the mikvah just for the purpose of chulin, huchzak lechulin. They are basically huchzak. They have a chazaka, right? What's the English word here, right? Huchzak. If one immerses himself, if one intended, right? Right, whatever. So he's huchzak. He's not considered to be tar for chulin. However, he's also a meiser. So if he went to go to the mikvah to go ahead and chulin, right? He had a little bit of chulin. All of a sudden, there's some meiser sheni available. You can't have meiser sheni because when you were you weren't careful when you went to the mikvah to refrain from touching things to eat meiser sheni. You're only thinking about chulin. So therefore, you're not on the chulin, on the meiser level. You got to go back. Ula meiser, right? La meiser tavel. So la meiser huchzak. It was huchzak meiser, right? He goes ahead and he goes for meiser. He's tavel. So la meiser huchzak meiser and aser l'tshuvah. Then he's aser l'tshuvah.
So the person who washes his hands.
Right. So this is right in the next case. That was the first. Washing hands was the first case. We just say you had to be no dying for chulin meiser.
He has to have in mind the highest level.
If he's going to have that, right? Right.
That he's intending.
Right.
Because otherwise
You won't be able to have that.
he
Right.
won't be able to.
Right. Tava l'truma, huchzak l'truma. But also the kodesh, right? So if he's tava l'truma, so he's going to have truma. He's a kohen, right? So he's huchzak l'truma, but he can't have hekdesh. All of a sudden, hekdesh meat comes to him. Oh, I wasn't tava for that. I got to be tava for that. Tava l'kodesh, huchzak l'kodesh, aser l'chatas, right? If he's tava l'kodesh and huchzak l'kodesh, but he's aser for mechatas, right? Tava l'chamer. Here's a rule. Mutter l'kal, right? I'm sure they're going to ask, what is this adding, right? So if he's tavel for something which is chamor, right? So then he's mutter with something which is below him, below it. So if he was tavel for, right, for meiser sheni, then he could have chulin, right? Tavel l'huchzak. If the person was tavel l'huchzak, he will loy tavel, right? Then if he didn't have anything in mind, then it's like he wasn't tavel. Big day ama aretz, medris leperush. Now, the begad in the clothing of Amaretz, right? Amaretz is basically a person who did not hold himself to high standards of Tumat Tahara. So, Tumas Medras is something that the person sat on or leaned upon, had put weight upon. Now, from a woman, I'm sorry?
Yeah, for the rice, it's only for a zav or a zav.
Right. So I say for a nida, or if his wife was a nida, or if he was a zav or zava, it would get on the clothing. So such a person is not necessarily careful. So perhaps his wife, who was a nida, might have sat on it, or he was a zav or something. So if his clothing tumas prushim, it's a big day amaris, medus leprushim. So as medus is someone who wanted to go ahead and let's say he sat on the clothing of amaris, and he wanted to go ahead and eat his chulin, and he normally eats chulin b'tahara, but he sat upon it closed, even though it was unknown. He didn't know it was Taveh at all. So therefore, it's medrus. It's considered Matame Tumas medrus for him to have that. Big day Prussian. If somebody eats chulin b'tahara, right, and somebody sat in his clothes, medrus like a truma. If someone sat on it, a Kohen sat on, and then wanted to go ahead and eat truma, he can't because he sat on the clothing of somebody who eats chulin b'tahara but doesn't necessarily eat truma. So therefore, he can't have it. Big day eichle truma, medrus l'kodesh. If someone sat on the clothing of someone who's eating truma, so and all of a sudden he wants to go ahead and eat, he can't eat kodesh because his medrus l'kodesh. And big day kodesh, and someone who was eating kodesh, but he's only for that level. Big day kodesh, medrus l'chatas. It was medrus for someone who wanted to go ahead and deal with the water of the chatas to go ahead and be matar people from tumas mix. And Yosef ben Yoezer haya chassid shevakuna v'haisa mitafchaso, right? Mitpachto, right? From his tapachas, right? His was medrus l'kodesh, right? So his handkerchief, right, was medrus l'kodesh because he was a chassid, even all right, that he would eat truma all the time, right? But it was only the level of truma. So even though he ate truma b'tahara all the time, nevertheless, his handkerchief, his clothing, whatever it was a medrus for someone who wanted to go ahead and eat hekdesh. And Yochanan ben good God, Yochel al taharas hakadosh kol yamav, you eat taharas hakadosh kol yamav, v'haisa meet pachaso, right? Medrus lechatas. That even though he would eat hekdesh all the time, and he was at level of eating hekdesh b'tahara, nevertheless his clothing would be matame tumas medrus for somebody who wants to go ahead and deal with the waters of the mechatas, to sprinkle ashes, right, for the paradim. Fine. That was the Mishnah. Mishnah, a little rough. Zok the Gemara. It was not really, but introduction. But you got to jump in. You just, the water's warm. So the Gemara says, now, we started off, the mission says, Neit Liyadayim for Chulin, Meiser, Lutruma. Chulin and Meiser, me, Boy, and Tiasadayim. And does Chulin and Meiser Sheni, do they require an Tiasadayim? Either, Yesukasha, Truma, Vabikurin, Chayav, and Misa. One who goes ahead and eats Truma, or bikurim, those are meant for the Kohen. You still eats them. Right? Chayav and alei misa. One is chay for the misa de shemayim. If he does it on purpose, right? The chaymesh. And if he does it accidentally, he has to pay it back. He has to tack on a fifth. If he also lazarim, it's forbidden to not kohanim. V'hei nichsei kohen, and they are the possessions of the kohanim completely. To the point, I think the Rashi is right to the point that they can go ahead and use it, I guess, to be mekadesh a woman, to marry a woman, right? And they're nullified in 1 in 100, the 2 in Tiasadayim, and required in Tiasadayim, right? And the Tiasadayim, Arav Shemesh, and for the sun to go down, we go to do the mikvah, then you got to wait till it's night. Hare Elu, right? But Truma Bikurim. So it sounds like these are said, right, by Truma and Bikurim. Mashen came in Meiser, right? As opposed to so it only says Truma Bikurim required in Tiasadayim, but not Meiser Sheni, and certainly not Chulin, right? So these two matanas that are given to the Kohanim require Nitiyas Adayim, but regular Meiser Sheni or Chulin does not. It's a kasha Meiser, kasha Chulin, Chulin. So it's a kasha and both. So Gemara says no. Bishlama Meiser Kasha. I understand Meiser Kasha. Hare Meir Rabbanan. When we talk about Meiser, the Meiser Sheni, maybe it's Machlokes between Meir Rabbanan. The Torah with the Mishnah Kolaton Bias Mayim Medivrei Sefer Metamis HaKodesh Who Paistos a Truma. Anything that requires, right? It says, so it says the Mishnah there. Anything that Kolaton Bias Mayim, anything that requires going tefillah, right? Metamis HaKodesh Who Paistos a Truma. So something which requires tefillah, right? So in a mikvah, so that we say is metame es hakodesh. Now, metame es hakodesh means like this. If it's metame kodesh, that means it gives it a level of a shlishi. Now, if it's a sheni, it makes it a shlishi because by it comes to kodesh, it goes to 4 levels. It gets to revi. So therefore, if a sheni touches an item, right? Then it's metame if it's kodesh, right? Because it makes it a shlishi, which could touch something, make it a revi. Upaisa is a truma, and apostles truma. Now truma, if it becomes a shlishi, that's the end of the line. If it touches against something else, that item does not become a revi. There is no shlishi, right? And shlishi doesn't make another shlishi. That's the end of the road, right? So something which passes something else, that just means it makes it possible. It makes it tame, but it doesn't make that's the end of the line. If it's metame it, that means it gives it the ability to make other things tame after it. It's not the end of the line. So therefore, it says, "Kolaton bias mayim medivrei sefer metame sekodesh." That can go ahead and metame kodesh. U'paises truma umuter lechulin meiser. And if a sheni touches a chulin or a meiser, right, then it will be okay. They say no, but meiser it also. Right, so we see over here that when it comes to
If it's kodesh,
yeah,
then there is another level of tuma. In other words, that's what the
Right.
supplement.
so over here, right,
Sheni, no, the basic thing is sheni doesn't make food ochli shlishi.
right, and therefore,
Unless
right,
It's truma. That's what he's saying. So therefore, meiser and chulin should be mutter if it's touched by a sheni.
right. So according to the Rabbanan over here,
Meir at least.
right. So if you see, Meir says it's right. So Chachamim says usher even b'meiser. So you see, right. So that which we said is usher meiser. So we see that noitli adayim, right, could be going by the Chachamim. Ela chulin achulin kasha, but chulin's a kasha. So the kasha kan be achila, kan be negia. Over here we're saying for noitli adayim, that's referring, right. It was talking about eating, right. But over here was Nagia was where it's not an issue. Right, by handling it's not an issue. But with eating it, then you need to go ahead and wash your hands for chul. So Masked Rav Shimon Rashi ad kan lo tigera bana ladra meir ela beachila the meiser. Aval b'negia the meiser v'achila dechulin like pligi. But we see beferish that even when it comes to negia, right, that there's no issue. So you can't say over there, right? The machlokas over there was in a case of where they were talking about the chulin being touched, because we see everybody holds that by negia it will be mutter, so it doesn't answer it. So ela idi achila, rather achila like kasha kan be achila denama kan be achila deferi. What is it referring to? Hand washing when it comes to bread. When it comes to hand washing chulin, that's bread. Then you have to go ahead and wash your hands. A person goes ahead and he washes his hands for peiros, that's megasi ruach. So that which we require when noitli adayin for chulin was talking about eating, was talking only about eating bread. And that which you say that you don't over there in bikurim, right, which you don't have to, was only applied to truma and bikurim, right? That was referring to referring to eating something such as fruits and not bread. Therefore, that would be okay. And Tana Rabbanan finally will just finish off with this brisa. Tana Rabbanan hanoita yadav, one who goes ahead and washes his hands, niskaven yadav taharas. So if he's niskaven to go ahead and be metayer, then yadav taharas. Light is kaven, but if he just washes his hands, but not for the purposes of tahara, you have tmeos. So the one who goes, he dips his hands into the mikvah. If he's going to be his hands, that's okay. But let's say he just wants to wash his hands or whatever. I don't know. There's sticky at it, right? No. I'm going to price whether or not he has kavana, right? Is tahara. Someone of nachon like kasha. Kan lechulin, kan lemeiser. What is it talking about? Chulin, right? Then he doesn't need kavanah. Oh, there's meiser, where he boy kavanah, right? And certainly meiser sheni is kavanah, and certainly as Rashi pointed out, choshen b'truma and other cases. And then we'll continue from here tomorrow with Hashem. Everyone have a wonderful day. I will, Hashem will be out of town this week, and I'll be back on Friday. So.